is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising, Book 2, Golden Sun. Chapters 39, 40, 41, and 42. At the Wall, Mud, Achilles, and Death of a Gold. In these chapters, I fucking knew it. Like, I didn't know it, but I really, like, you guys know, I had feelings. I had thoughts, and I'm pretty sure I said them way back in the first book that I thought maybe. I wasn't sure, but like, I kind of, well, welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. These chapters, you guys, are so packed that I am going to make a big effort to just stay focused because there is so much to talk about. Of course, right off the top, though, I do kind of have to address that the idea that Fitchner was a red originally had crossed my mind. And I think I mentioned that. I may have even been like, is he Aries? But I think I was kind of kidding because I don't think I would have put it down as that high ranked a position for him. I just sort of thought that him and Severo, they just felt off and they felt too down to earth, and there was just a whole vibe there, and we will get there. But let's start at the beginning. 39 starts right when Darrow has told Roke he knows the Sovereign is here. And it turns out to be what I was worried it was, that he actually let Aja escape on purpose. And I'm just really irritated with the way that Darrow handles this. There's a point later on where he's wondering if somebody betrayed him. And I hope that I am wrong, but it wouldn't surprise me if it were Roke. And I just think it's kind of remarkable how far Roke has transformed from being the guy who's got your back to I don't feel like I know you anymore. And I'm not even trying to call that unfounded, because I definitely understand that being stabbed with a hypodermic needle and drugged without being given a reason by your friend might feel like that's enough to just end a friendship. But it just, considering the excuse that I thought was somewhat convincing that Darrow gave about trying to protect him and everything, all that I can come up with otherwise is that he blames Darrow for Quinn's death. It's Quinn, right? And I just can't get right with that accusation in any sense. I said it already, but it just feels like he is really robbing her of her agency and infantilizing her, and I am super, super bummed about it. So this whole thing is a mess. I'm not going to get any further into that because I've talked about it already. Was he? Cassie says he is Aries, but was not a red. Oh, I assumed he was because he says bloody damn. So I thought that was like a red thing. I don't think I know that though yet, Cassie. So don't spoil me, because that might be a spoiler actually. But it does not matter at this point. So, this attack on the planet where they just fucking land in these star suits, I think is what he keeps calling them, that basically allow you to come in from outer space as a single person. This whole thing is so wild, and the description of the terrain here, it's a lot more beautiful than I was expecting. And I know that we saw Mars when we were looking out from, I don't even know exactly where they were, but that Darrow was looking out, seeing for the first time that it actually is habitable. But I think that I expected the habitable portion to be significantly smaller than it sounds like it actually is. This description, he mentions the great floating mountain Olympus reigns, and I don't think that I realized that the Institute was on Mars. I think I just had this idea in my head that it was somewhere else, and I don't know where I got that. I just, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just clearing some things up here right out of the gate. We meet with Jupiter and Ragnar on one of floating Olympus's white spires. There are dead men in the halls on the slopes. They used it as a base, Jupiter says cheerily. Your Stained disagreed with their presumptuousness. I like the beast. I just can't with the fact that they keep calling this guy an animal and a beast. It's just so gross. I know that's the point, but it really does make me so uncomfortable. And there's a point here where Darrow begins to get suspicious at the fact that there's almost no resistance here. And that there is clearly a trap being set. But they're over-relying upon it to stall us while they reallocate men and materiel. Static defenses without massive mobile support haven't been relevant since the Maginot Line. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I don't know what that references to. So the approach here, there's a kind of argument about it. And Jupiter is just like, let's fucking do total war and fucking annihilate this place. And Mustang is like, this is the planet we're trying to take for ourselves. Why would you want to destroy it? What, so you can spend the rest of your life trying to build it back up to what it was when you actually wanted it? Does that sound like a good use of your time? The passage to Aegea is 80 kilometers wide on average, 7-kilometer high walls on either side, all farming and agriculture for the city. Bologna likely littered the place with mines if they had time. And I couldn't help but think at that point about how easy it was for Darrow to scatter the mines that were like those little sort of spikes while he was in the midst of talking to Lorne. So they were like, well, you know, if they had time, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like it takes that long. I feel like they could very easily have done that, but I don't know. So she's suggesting like we could make a dash. Just because they didn't contest our landing doesn't mean there's something nefarious. And this is when Darrow is like, oh, I get it. You're trying to rush things here because you are afraid that once Lorne gets near your dad, he's just going to kill him. And she's like, yeah, they don't get along. And when Darrow's like, well, he's not that type, she's like, isn't he? Because, like, my father's a bad man. He's my father, and I want to save him, and there's, you know, that's real. But also, Lorne is, like, an executioner for people he thinks deserve it. He did it to Tactus, and my dad deserves it a whole fucking lot more than Tactus did. So I'm going to go ahead and keep being worried about that. And this is when Darrow tells everybody BT dubs, the Sovereign is here, like the rest of them, because it turns out his closest knew already, but he did not tell Roke. And he says, I didn't want to tell Roke with the way he's been acting. And it just, for me, feels really backwards. To me, the way he has been acting is why you should tell him. You need to let him know. And I can't help but feel like he has misjudged how to handle this pretty severely. So this is when they head out. They are moving through this canyon. We go fast. Speeder bikes have more pace than star shells. Those star shells, okay, that's what it is, not star suit. Those grays and the ones on spiders tear ahead after the ripwings and heavily armored dropships that will deposit men even closer to the wall. Flashes ahead indicate they've detonated mines or the mine killers have done their job. No way to tell. And there are some drones that come out. It's described as a cloud of metal, which I really liked that. It just felt so tactile and really like the word cloud feels so soft and non-threatening, but then you following it up with metal, it just completely changes the whole energy of it and is suddenly really scary sounding. I see the defensive wall now. Most cities do not have walls so massive. They cost too much. And he's like, all right, so the thing is that there used to be a point in history when people would lay siege to cities that had these kinds of walls around them. And you would just have the garrison around, and even though, you know, inside you would be protected, you may starve to death. You know, there is a lot of damage done over time, and it's really drags on and is like a lot of suffering. And he says just straight up, the reason we don't do that anymore is because nobody has the patience for it now. And I was just like, that actually rings pretty true to me. All along the vast defensive wall, fire ripples over steel, like tiny flowers fast blooming upon the 90-kilometer-wide sheer gray wall. 2 feint assaults are led to my left and right. And there's all these grays in combat armor. There are mines that do go off. And there's a moment here. The Bologna Kill Squad is like presenting a very juicy sort of target here. They have their shields shimmering with their eagle on it, you know, and he's like, all right, let's go. And he's about to like head in that direction. And Mustang is like, dude, no, focus. This isn't what we're here for. And he has to be like, shit. Okay. Yeah. You're right. So they dive into the water, and it turns out that the Reds have helped them out by getting drilling through the grates under the city so that they can get through. And he doesn't tell his people that he has helps of Reds, of course. And apparently they are never going to ask the question. They will not question it. He specifically says, which I'm really curious why they wouldn't ask that question. It feels like these are people who tend to want to know a lot of details. And it just sort of struck me as a little unlikely that they would just be like, oh, well, glad you got that done. It's just sort of this assumption that it was like a lurcher squad that he sent on ahead. And I'm willing to accept that you could say that and that it would sound believable, but the fact that nobody, like, it's described as like nobody will question, I was like, won't they? That's surprising. So they're going underwater, and there is this moment where I think it's Severo who goes on ahead and comes back down to let them know that there's nobody up there except a little girl playing in the mud. Show of hands. Who thought that was a really big fucking problem? Anybody else? Because as soon as they said that, I'm like, you're literally attacking from space, and there's just a little girl chilling out here in the mud in the river like it's a normal day? That doesn't sound right to me. I had some real concerns about that immediately. And it bummed me out a little bit that nobody seems to wonder, until they surface. And then Darrow is like, she shouldn't be here. This doesn't make any sense. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Does it? You really should have noticed that it didn't make any sense before you wound up in the position where you were coming out of the water. But she turns around. She has this device in her little basket. And Severo is like, shoot her. Which, honestly, Darrow knocks his hand aside. But I was kind of like, ooh. Sorry, did you guys hear that? This thunderstorm started like 10 minutes before I started recording. I was a little late because I was bringing Pippin inside. I didn't know it was supposed to storm today. It was not in the forecast. So I had to go and let him in unexpectedly. But that thunder, damn, that was loud. I have these headphones that are a little bit noise canceling, and I could really hear that. But yeah, Severo says to shoot her. Darrow knocks his hand aside, and I was sort of like, dude, you should have killed. I get it that you don't want to kill children. I understand that this is your principle, but we aren't in a normal situation now, and it's very clear that this little girl is directly involved in whatever this trap is. And honestly, I was sort of the opinion that, like, it was likely she would die anyway. Whatever's going on here, it doesn't feel like she's going to be getting out alive, regardless of whether or not. But, this is what makes Darrow, I guess. It just felt to me like a foolish choice. So it says, as I look high above, we're on the far out of range of the probe Severo sent up, and far beyond the limits of the EMP globe the girl carries, perch Bologna Knights and their obsidian retinue waiting. The girl presses a button on the globe, and that's when we begin to die. And it would be very easy to be like, oh, they picked a little girl because she would sort of feel like non-threatening in being in that location in the water. But it was more than that. They know Darrow won't injure her. I feel like they knew he, of anybody, would be the one to allow her to press that button. That if it were another Gold, they would kill her and she wouldn't get a chance to do it. So this EMP, like everything that they are doing, relies on electricity. So now it's all dead. Our electronics die, our grav boots sputter, starshell synapses fail, causing the massive metal suits to be gripped by gravity, and we plummet down. And this results in them being dragged to the bottom of the fucking river, and they're in a position where they can either be picked off or simply left there to drown. And he is just like, I'm laying there completely helpless, flipping out, and my comm is dead, so I can't hear anybody. But if I could, it'd probably be a lot of screaming and cursing. Hyperventilating. Terror traps itself in my chest, tensing me, making me swallow the air, eating it as though it'll give me the power to move. And this is when he thinks, like, Cassius knew it had to have been him, or was I betrayed? As much as I said I wouldn't be surprised if it was Roke, the fact that Cassius doesn't know Darrow is here specifically makes me think that it wasn't Roke, because I think that if Roke were going to betray him, he'd, like, do it. He'd go for it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Roke was like, I'll betray him, but, like, not... I'll just say that there will be forces there, and I won't say that it's Darrow. But it's just, to me, it doesn't read like a betrayal if all the information that's relevant wasn't given. And Darrow is pretty certain the fact that Cassius doesn't come and find him and take him down specifically, that he leaves after the initial part of this plan is put into motion and is successful. He's like, I do not believe that he really thought I was even here, or else he would have stayed to deal with me himself. So at this point, finally, he's like, okay, I know that my razor will still work. And it says, when the EMP blast detonated, it shut down the electrical synapses, which means the suit froze, but the razor still works. And I don't know how the EMP doesn't affect the razor. It shut down the electrical synapses, which means, like, I thought that the razor was electrical. And I don't, freely admitting, I don't really understand how, it says that the impulse is chemical, but the impulse to, like, activate it is chemical, which doesn't sound like the same thing that it being powered by. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Curious about it. But anyway, what he has to do here is use the razor, and he has to, like, cut off his own arm, which is given, like, a shockingly little amount of description to me. It just felt so... There's the pain is described briefly, but it felt like going forward from here, the description of not having his arm is not mentioned enough, considering how massive an injury that would be. It will save your life for the price of a limb. Those are the words they told me when they put the sling blade in my hand as a boy. Salvation is sacrifice. The razor's impulse is chemical. Its switch will respond to me. It will straighten, but around my arm, I have to be fast. So he flicks the switch on. It straightens and slices through. Water rushes through the shredded arm to cool the burning wound. And I'm like, did it not go through his whole arm? Is that why it's just not really mentioned? Because it says that it goes through, it stops as it bites through muscle, but not through bone. And that sentence is confusing to me. It sounds like it's saying that the muscle slows it down, but bone doesn't slow it. I think what it's supposed to mean is that it goes through my muscle and doesn't quite go through my bone. But it just felt confusingly worded. So, and saying, like, for the price of a limb, that sounds to me like you're straight up cutting your arm off. And yet he describes this later as, like, a mangled forearm that's bloody and not actually missing. So I feel like I'm misunderstanding the way that this is supposed to work here. But anyway, he is able to get free of this, like, gauntlet here, because the reason he can't move, when these things are not powered up, they're just solid hunks of metal that hold you. They're an anchor. You know, they aren't. There's no pumping of oxygen inside. None of the function is there. So managing to get out of it is the main thing here. So he just barely manages to use the razor to, like, cut his way out. And he scratches and, you know, almost gets himself with the razor, but just manages to not. He goes over and finds Ragnar, who's crying in this, like, just really hopeless, sad sort of moment. And as soon as he sees Darrow, it's just like, oh, it's on. Here we go. And there is something about this near death that, for me, makes the difference in what goes on with Ragnar later. I can't help but feel like this moment to him changes things a little bit. So there's some that can see what they're doing, but they aren't able to help them. He has to just hope that they're going to manage, which I needed to remind myself that golds can survive beneath the water without oxygen, for a lot longer than, like, a regular human being can. And when they get to the surface, Ragnar dragged me into the mud between 2 dead obsidians, 2 Bologna golds, 6 obsidians, and 6 greys. Walk along the dark riverbank, finishing those who lie helpless. And there is this description of these guys, like, pinning down an obsidian and basically torturing him before they kill him. It's really, like, truly awful. And it's not even gold to do it. This is the grays that do it. Ugh. Half naked, he and I cake ourselves in the dark, heavy mud. It cools the tracework lacerations on my body and covers the tattoos on his. I gesture to one of the gold helmets and mime our survivor's oxygen running out. Ragnar nods. So he takes a razor and he hands it to Ragnar, who is like, the fuck? Because evidently they are completely banned from using razors. That is like a death sentence. You would literally be killed. And it's death by starvation. So it's a kind of death that won't let you enter Valhalla according to their religion. It's wild to me that these people are bred explicitly for war, but the most effective weapon they aren't allowed to use. It makes sense. You really don't want to enable your slaves to fight back adequately if they ever want to come up against you. Like that was the closest they ever came to really ending the societal structure that we know now. So a smart move, actually. But it had never occurred to me before that this was just straight up illegal. And this winds up being a bit of a bone of contention later on. So he finally gets Ragnar to take it, but it's like, it takes a little bit of convincing. He just believes. I mean, it's not even that he believes, it's those consequences are real, so they managed to get, let's see, I think how many out? Like 6? This whole thing is so rough. Like there's a moment in the water where he's like coming out, let the Greys see me coming. Let the Greys try to see me coming. I'm fast and I'm nearly on them when they open fire. And he's like, I'm not being graceful here. I'm frantic and I'm just going through them. And they miss their window to catch me. And he just takes down 12 of them, I think, in a shot. I marvel at his power. He grabs one of the golds by the foot as they pass in the air. The pulse shield electrocutes him, sending pain lancing through his body, but he just roars, holding on, and with a scream coming not from his throat, but his soul, he slams the gold down to the ground like he's chopping wood. He somehow manages to rip the boot off. And this is when one of them notices that he's let him carry a razor and is just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you are spitting on our ancestry. It's not even like spitting on traditions. This is like a reflection of your respect for your own family, your lineage, And this is a point, I love this so much. This guy is like, I am Gaius Aucarthus. We built the columns of and Darrow interrupts and just says, this isn't the Iliad. Ragnar killed this fool. And I just found that really funny. He's just like, oh my God, we do not have time for this posturing, sir. Let's get a move on. And he says, you sent a dog to do your fighting. And Ragnar says, I am a man. And he rushes forward and picks up the corpse of a fallen obsidian and uses it as a shield. He punches Gaius, no weapon, just his fist. He punches him so hard in the pulse shield the man falls backwards. Then he kills the others, hacking through his defenses with mad fury till he cuts him in half. He kicks the top of the corpse aside. Just like, imagine this, guys. The top, and batters down Gaius, who sinks into the dark mud as Ragnar thumps forward. And Ragnar tells him, if you yield to me as like man to man, I'll let you live. And Gaius is like, the fuck I will. And Ragnar says, then become dirt. What a line. I love become dirt. Like, there's the whole dust to dust, but something about it being dust, that's so much more dignified sounding. There's a mystery to dust. Dirt, that feels very disrespectful. And this is when they have managed to like get the people out from the bottom of the river, and the number of dead, it's really bad. We'll get to it in a moment, because once Severo realizes just how many people they've lost, he has a moment, and Darrow has to be like, are you still with me after all this? And he says, absolutely. But it would have been understandable if he had sort of been like, I didn't know how this was going to be. Like, this is just not what I pictured. Oh my God. Sorry. There's a bunch of stuff. Cassie says it's a line of walled fortresses the French built along their border with Germany. Oh, I think Cassie was answering a question earlier, but I missed it. So now I don't even remember what the question was that I asked. I'm sorry. Alex says there's a mystery to dust. Pretty sure that was a completely different book series. That's a little reference to Golden Compass, those who don't know. So this is when Thistle sees that Ragnar has the razor in his hand, and she yells, drop that. And he does, and looks at Darrow like shit. It's, even after everything that just happened, they're still fixated on this. And it's just, I really, really love this moment, because this is human nature. We can have the most, like, horrifying shit happening around us, and we'll get weirdly fixated on silly things that really shouldn't matter anymore, because we at some point decided this is important, though, when it's not. Actually, it's not important at all. But it gives us a sense of control in the midst of a situation in which we feel totally helpless. And so we will just zero in, like, target lock on it in a way that really makes no sense, but makes us feel like, oh, there's some order in the universe that we should still abide by. So Thistle here, she eventually, Darrow is like, you guys know I don't, like, let slaves follow me. This is what I did at the Institute originally. And I guess you guys are surprised that I actually stick by that in real life. But you shouldn't be. This is just, that is who I am. And he realizes from the way she behaves that she is not with him anymore. She'll see it through today, but after this, she ain't gonna follow him no more. And that sucks, but it's completely believable. After we go through the suits of those who fell on the riverbank, we know the count, and it is so devastating that Severo walks away. Weed is dead, Rotback is dead, Harpy died before we hit the ground, and many of the new recruits are dead. Only Thistle, Clown, Screwface, and Pebble are left. 11 of the original 50 Obsidians remain. Yikes. And this is when Severo says, I was wrong about war. And Darrow says, I can't do this without you. Are you with me? And he just says, always, Darrow, always. So then we go to 43 Achilles. And Ragnar is like, hey, you're going to handle these obsidians, and I'm not going to put a gold with you. Do you get what that means? I know this is a big deal. It's just the beginning. But you need to choose what you are going to do. And he holds out the razor, and Ragnar says, I choose to follow you, and I choose to lead them. And Thistle, oh my God, what are you doing? I love when Severo's like, who are you to decide if he deserves it? And she's like, I'm a gold, which is just exactly, it's that simple. And they don't ask the next question, which is, why does that mean anything? Because you decided it does. It's just, this is that thing that happens inside so many of us that we have to, like, learn to question. You just accept that things are a way, and you don't ever really ask the next question. Why, though? Who decided that? And why? How far back is that really? And so much of the time, the only reason things are a certain way is because someone in power decided that's how it should be set up. And if you actually try and persist in asking questions, then people try to come up with like biological realities that they are relying on in these very biased ways to prove their point about why things are the way they are. And it's always so funny because like that stuff is so surface. If you actually talk to anybody who works in a field of like medicine or biology, they can refute what these like basic bitches are trying to claim based on that faulty science. So this is part of why education is the enemy of bigotry. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent. So let's get back to this. So I bend and find another razor cast in the mud. I toss this one to another of the obsidians, a nasty-looking woman half my size. She holds it like it's a snake, glancing up at me in fear. They are raised believing we are gods. To be given Thor's hammer? How would I hold it? And Severo goes through, grabs more, and hands them out to the obsidians, and is just like, go on. Because evidently, the kinds of weapons these folks are going to be up against, there's no point sending them if they don't have razors. Like, it's just going to be pointless. We must move fast, but we only have one pair of functional grav boots among us. And you guys, somehow I didn't fully grasp when this first happened that their equipment was just shot, period. I think that I thought they are inside the field of the EMP, but if they take their equipment outside of it, it will begin to function again, like a jam field, you know? But no, that's not how that works at all. It has affected the basics of how it functions. And that's probably, it could be repaired, but that would take actually taking it apart. So yeah, they're just without functioning shit at this point, which really sucks. And he tells them all, like, you're going to have to take your armor off because we have got to move really fast. We have to take a pace here. If we take the Sovereign, you know, then we'll be all set, but we need to really get through fast in order for this to happen. My pace. They then exchange worried looks and start taking off their armor. And when he says my pace and that being like all of them looking amongst one another, I just really enjoy the fact that Darrow really got carved so well. The fact that he can outdo these golds, that his pace is such that they're all like, Jesus, okay, well, we better fucking get ready then, because this is going to be nigh impossible. So Severo at this point says, they've been with you from the beginning, Darrow. We are already half the number that took you from Luna. You might have replaced Pax with Ragnar, but you can't replace them or me. I thought you were with me. I'm your conscience. I follow your ass everywhere, so don't be a shithead. So they set off. And Severo's going on ahead and just letting them know what they are going to be running into. Intermittently having to get into battles, and like injuries are beginning to get racked up a little bit. 12 of them in the wall's face. Our boys are pouring in, and Ragnar killed the Wind Knight and almost cut down Cassius. And Clown is like, what? An Olympic knight? And he's like, yep, just took him down in front of all his men. And the Obsidians in the army are losing their minds. And I was just like, Darrow, how are you going to explain this to Augustus? Look, at this point, Severo said, you don't need Augustus anymore. People are following you. You are basically as close to a human god as we're getting. Fuck Augustus. There's no point anymore of even dealing with him. He is just not the guy anybody is impressed with or interested in anymore. And at the time I was like, well, maybe, but what if they're not quite ready? And now I'm like, I don't see how you can hide behind Augustus, because he's not going to support handing over these razors to Obsidians. I don't see it. The whole concern that he had with Darrow was, are you a Democrat? And Darrow was so certain that just saying, what if they side with us, was going to get him killed on the spot without question. How do you think you're going to be able to, like, you can't take this back. You gave them razors in front of your people. They are going to have been fighting other golds with those razors. It's going to be well known, because this is a huge breach. The way everybody has reacted this whole time shows us that it's sort of seen as like a perversion. People will be talking about it. You aren't going to be able to take it back. So what is your plan? How did you think you're going to get out of it? I feel like, as much as I respect what he is doing here, I don't see where he goes from here. And I am desperate to know, because Augustus is just, there is no fucking way he will be on board. And as far as I'm concerned, the way Mustang reacts to them having razors will tell me how she would have reacted to Darrow being a red, like if he decided to tell her. There comes a point here where he is like, I think I will tell her soon. Like, I have to. But considering the way things go, I am not sure he's going to get that chance anytime soon. So they reach this wall that would normally not be a problem, but without grav boots, it's an issue. And Severo is just able to get him up to the top of the wall, but when he goes back and tries to, like, lift the others up, it just doesn't, there's not enough juice in them. And there's this boom, and he hears, like, oh, Mustang did it. The translucent shield that separated this world from the world of ships fails. It wobbles, and distorting the fires in the city and lightning above it like a corrupted mirror, shatters into prismatic mist. 1/8 of it shatters. A flood of pent-up water falls down on that section of the city in great gray sheets. And Pebbles says it didn't work, but it just takes a second, and then it begins this, like, chain reaction. Roke, if he's winning, will launch the reinforcements. The city is as good as taken. And even now, the Sovereign will be extracted from the bunkers by her bodyguards to make an escape from the lost planet. So he's looking at this, and he's like, I have to do it. I've got to do it. My people aren't going to be able to make it, and I've got to do it. And as soon as Severo sees his face, he's like, no, you fucking aren't. No, don't you dare. Don't you fucking do it, Darrow. And Darrow is just like, bye? And just takes off at top speed. He decides that he is not going to sacrifice all of them, because he just believes they will die. And he may die, but at least that's only his life. And the moment here, the way that he describes this, some men have threads of life so strong that they fray and snap those around them. I really liked that. It made me think of The Kite Runner, if any of you have read that book, but it's set in Afghanistan. I think it's Afghanistan. And it was a popular pastime you would rub the cord, like the string of kites, with something that was like sticky, and then roll the string of the kite in crushed glass so that it would be really sharp, but it wouldn't look that way, and you could still roll it up. And then you would play these, like, basically you would have kite fights in the air, where the string of one kite, you would try and get it to cut another kite string. And whoever was able to do it, they got to take and keep that kite. And it was sort of like this, you know, it was a kind of a big deal in the neighborhoods. And it just really made me think of that. Like, Darrow's lifeline is covered in ground glass, as far as I am concerned. So he flies through everything and is just... he describes this as like he cannot feel his own body. He is running faster than he ever has in his entire life and is just like, the fuck? She is not getting out of here. Not happening. After all this, after all these people died, I am not going to let this go. I've been seen on sensors, no doubt. Gray lurchers are coming for me. Obsidian bodyguards have been loosed from some hidden barracks to kill me. They'll only catch me if I stop. And even as I examine the landing pad, I do not break my stride. Oranges bustle around the black shuttles prepping to launch. I'm not too late, but the door from the Citadel is far closer than I to the ship. They come out in a rush. I don't see her, just purple capes swirling in the rain and wind. And they hurry on, and he's just... They're basically at a run. I see Aja and Karnas and Fitchner, that ugly traitorous son of a bitch. And even here, you guys, when he was like, traitorous son of a bitch, I just couldn't feel that way about Fitchner. As much as I was like, dude, really? That he had thrown in with the Sovereign, there was a part of me that kind of still just felt like, I don't know, I'm not buying it, you know? So him saying that he's a traitor here, my gut reaction was, stop it, Darrow. No, he's not. Even though Darrow was right to feel this way. And I'm still curious whether or not, like, Severo is aware of who Fitchner actually is. Because, there was a part of me that was sort of like, how did the Ares people feel confident enough that it was, like, okay to tell Severo about the plan? And now I'm like, oh, it had to have been Fitchner, right? Which means that Severo was faking that he had a falling out with his father. I am assuming. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just was told about the thing because his father had seen how loyal Severo was and judged that it was an okay thing to do, but he kept his own cover, which actually would be hilarious. Like, what Severo will do when he finds out. My God, can you imagine? So a balloon of gold turns as I near. His eyes flash wide, and I slash him at the run as he lets out half a scream. More turn. Women, men, warriors, politicos, golds, and silvers I recognize from my days at Augustus' side. Their realization of my presence comes in waves. The enemy is supposed to be at the gates, not among them, so they flinch in seeing me. And when they gather their wits, I'm already past their armored hands. I dodge a Gray's outstretched grip, snag a small munitions pouch from his waist. I lash backward, hitting flesh. I love this so much. It's just so much fun, the fact that they just didn't think he was going to be here. And it makes sense that they keep comparing him to Achilles. It really, So he jumps on the ship as the ramp is retracting. He leaps for it and manages to just barely get in there as the ramp finally closes up. 6 Praetorians in full armor watch me. Karnas is with them, and Aja and stocky Fitchner, his eyes widening as he sees me. And as soon as he realizes they're all here, Darrow is like, oh, fuck. I thought, some of them would have gone on other ships. I didn't think they would all be here. Everybody. And I love... Darrow? Fitchner almost moans. What? Karnas laughs, looking about to see if the others know how ridiculous a present just fell into their laps. What? Andromedus, where did you come from? It looks like Jove himself just shit you out. So, of course, the Sovereign is just like, Aja, cut off his head. And Aja comes at him and is like, no friends, no army, no hope. At which point, Darrow says, who needs hope when you have a pulse grenade? And he holds up the munitions belt. And all I could think here, guys, was, why are you showing it to them? just do it. Just pull out one and use it. If you're going to use it, fucking do it as fast as possible before the ship manages to like get past the atmosphere and out. Handle this shit so that there is still any chance that if something happened to the ship while you're on it, you would survive. Like, I don't know how fast the ship is going. It's very likely that he still wouldn't survive even here. But I just wanted him to like go for it really quickly. And instead he tries to use this as like leverage to force the Sovereign to land the ship. But because he doesn't have any grav boots, all she has to do is tell the pilot to roll. And he gets like thrown into the ceiling. He drops the grenade. And then Octavia just opens the hatch and the grenade falls out. And now he's got nothing. And I was just like, dude, wow, this is... I kept hoping that he like had another plan, that there was like a different thing that he was up to that I had just, but no, that seems to have been the last hope that he had. And finally, she's like, okay, Fitchner, you have a camera, right? Film Aja killing him. And then Karnas breaks in and he's like, let me kill him. It's my family's right. And she's like, your family is the one that we're supposed to be in charge of Mars. And now I don't have Mars anymore. So fuck your rights. No. Fitchner tries to do, well, he'd make a better prisoner. If you turn him, let him recant and he'll serve you. You wanted him, for a reason. And she turns and gives him this look and he's just like, fuck. Because now it's clear he's not wholly here on her side. Like, he just cares enough about Darrow. And she decides that she's going to test his loyalty by telling him to kill Darrow, which he really should have seen coming. But he comes forward toward Darrow, and as he's coming forward to do the job, Karnas shoves him aside and just begins battling with Darrow. And Darrow manages to just gut him and then take his head off. And you guys, a Praetorian runs at me. I throw my razor at him. It takes him in the chest and he falls to the ground. I take my blade from his chest and stumble back from the watching Praetorians. Should I keep recording this? Oh my God. That got such a guffaw out of me, you guys. I laughed so hard, out loud. Oh man, that cracked me up. So Karnas missed most of me, but not all. Blood sluices from between my neck and left shoulder where his razor found purchase. It cut through my collarbone. My body sags. Ugh, God. At this point, again, the Sovereign's like, get his head, and we will get his head on a pike on film. I just fucking do the job here. Fitchner's beady eyes swell with sadness. Born the lowest of the golds, he rose to the top on merit alone. What a man. To think I ever thought him weak. Here, at the end of things, I know we will win Mars. Augustus will be freed, the war will continue. Gold will weaken, and Red will rebel. Maybe, just maybe, they will rise and find freedom. I've done what Ares asked. I created chaos. The rest will go to other men, women. Io would be pleased. And so he's like, all right, well, I think I'm just going to give up the ghost at this point. Aja opens the ramp again. And when the ramp opens, it's sort of a weird thing where he is feeling like he is actually in the veil already. The mist and the rain, he like seems to think he's already crossing over. It was a sort of interesting thing because, like, you know, the way that it's written, when Aja rushes forward, we exchange 3 moves before she knocks my blade aside and punches me so hard in the chest with her fist that I think I'm dead. And I thought that was like a metaphor, but then it's going to him thinking he's in the veil, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm dead, like, seems to actually be literally true. So he is so disoriented that he is interpreting the sound of the steps coming toward him as his uncle. And he says, Uncle Darrow, and Fitchner's like, nope, it's me. My head dips. I spit out blood in my mouth. I'm nauseous and fading. Tell Mustang, EO, I love them. I yawn so deeply. You bloody damn fool, he says in a low whisper, shaking his head. I had it under control. I didn't. I blink through the fog. What? It is me, he says. It's always been me, boyo. The fog disappears. I look up at him. I look up at Ares as he dons his Rage Knight helmet and shoots his pulse fist back at the Praetorians, sending them scattering. He tosses back a sonic grenade. The Sovereign just yells, Fitchner, traitor. There's an explosion. Something hits Darrow in the chest, and he is falling, and it describes, like, you know, the feeling of going down a roller coaster, basically, stomach in your throat. But there's another sound before the darkness swallows me. Fitchner, Ares, terrorist lord of the underworld, howls like a wolf as he carries me to safe harbor. And that is the end of chapter 42. So the next episode is the end of this book. I can't believe how fast these are going, you guys. I'm really enjoying this series. I'm so curious how the next book's going to end because, like, Fitchner has shown himself to be a traitor, but he hasn't come out as Ares to the other golds or anything. So they will see him as a traitor, but not as the terrorist, which means that if he has thrown in on, quote, Darrow's side, this could just be a whole different game now. I'm really curious, too, because being the Rage Knight, that brings him some cachet, but people didn't respect him very much to begin with. So I'm sort of like, is that just going to make his cause, Darrow's cause, seem that much more, what's the word I want? I guess illegitimate, maybe? But I don't know. I'm just really curious what the reaction to this is going to be. And, like, where is he taking him? Is he just taking him back down to the planet to his own people? I hope so. Because I really want them... I want a rendezvous. I want everybody talking, and I really want to know what's going on with Rogue. A lot. But I guess we'll have to see. All right, I have to wrap. But thank you guys again so much for joining me. I really hope y'all are enjoying the coverage. And thank you, Ashley, for commissioning this one. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.